The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the Med School Survival Seminar led by Javi Ochoa, a third-year medical student. My name is Kat Kleist, and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager at USMLE-Rx. I'm here to answer questions in the chat, support Javi, and at the very end, I'll select two raffle winners from tonight's webinar. Tonight, we wanted to try something a little different than our usual question labs or path to the USMLE success webinars. This will be just as valuable and engaging, but it's insider information from a med student who's going through it right now. Since it's back to school season, we're hoping that hearing his story and going through the years with him will help you find the right study, work, life, and fun balance for you. This is interactive, so please ask questions in the chat and we'll answer them there, or I'll read them to Javi if with something that we should share with the group. So let's get started. Javi, take it away.
Yeah, for sure. So hi everyone. So I'm Javi. I am a third-year medical student here at Texas Tech Health Sciences in Lubbock. Currently, I'm in Amarillo. Kind of a bit of a background. The way our medical school works is, so we are in Lubbock. You do the first 2 years in Lubbock, and then after that, you get sent to either one of 4 campuses, one in Midland, Odessa, one in Amarillo, which is where I'm at, and then one of the 2 Lubbock campuses. So like Kat said, today is kind of just to show kind of like at least my perspective on medical school. I think I've had a pretty good run so far. We're gonna make it through the very end, and it's just been a fun time. So I just kind of wanted to kind of share a little bit about kind of what I did going into medical school into my first 2 years, the summer between first and second year. People always wondering what to do that, and also talk a bit about my gap year, my research year, my enrichment year that I took, and then from there, kind of just a few things that I kind of picked up along the ways that helped me be a little more successful as the first 2 years went forward. So Kat, is it okay if I just say like next slide as I go? Is that okay?
That is perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Oh, for sure. And please, and any question that comes up on the chat, anyone, like I talk a lot, so I love being interrupted. I'm kidding. No, but please ask questions so that way we can address whatever you ask, whatever you want to know. So that being said, how to survive medical school? So so next slide, please, Kat. Okay, so kind of, people always ask, like, I don't know if anyone here is, if you want to put in the chat, if anyone here is going into medical school for the first year, or you're about to start medical school. Basically what I did the summer before medical school is I just chilled out. I had a very non-traditional route to medical school, like a lot of us do, and I just really kind of took it as a victory lap. I just did all the time took the time to do everything that I want to do, which these days I'm not super active, but before that I was a college athlete and a triathlete and a distance runner. So before medical school, that's all I just did was just continue working out. I was part of initially I was class of 2024, so I was the COVID class. So everything was outdoors, which I loved. And you can see it kind of here on the left as kind of some of my friends / not former classmates, because they continued on to fourth year. We went hiking a few times before the summer. There's my dog Zoe. Zoe has actually clocked in, fun fact, 15 miles with me running back from a long, long time ago. These days we huff and puff 1 mile, but we're getting back into it. And then there's my friend Kenneth. Kenneth is a third year right now, and we just really were very avid bikers. I was really trying to break into the YouTube game. Did not realize TikTok was the way to go. But yeah, that's just kind of a way to come into kind of how I transitioned into the first year. Kat, next slide, please. And so a bit about my first year. So something that I'm very passionate about is mental health advocacy in medical school. So kind of a bit of a background is I did this, what we call, I guess, in the business is a SMP, a special master's program, where I took the first year medical school classes, my first year of graduate school. I fell in love with the school, so this is where I went for medical school. So the first year was basically a repeat of my first and second year, because the second year I was also TA during grad school. So it gave me a lot of opportunities to get involved in clubs and research. And I have a slide that's more dedicated for us to have that conversation, but I really took, in the age of pass-fail, step one, going to a school that is a pass-fail curriculum for the first 2 years, I really took it upon myself to get involved in clubs and research. I was in class leadership in student government. I started a few electives. I started a finish a nutrition elective at my campus, a preventative medicine elective, a cultural sensitivity elective on my campus. I like to do a lot of things, is what I'm saying. I'm really into preventative care. And one of my biggest projects was I started a diabetic screening initiative at this free clinic during my first year. But I also knew research was the name of the game, at least as far as I saw it. I'm not the smartest thing in the world. I have to work really, really, really hard. If you can see, my first aid book is torn up to shreds because I'm always referencing it. But I like working. And so I figured, well, I got to do research. How do I do research? The way I got into all the research, people ask the question a lot is I just cold called. Like I have no interest in like ortho or OB, but I still emailed them and I was like, hi, my name is Javi. I'm very interested in this specialty, but do you have any research projects? And eventually I got hooked up with the interventional cardiologist, and that's what we did. I did it for the first 2 years. During the first 2 years, we went to a few conferences, which was exciting. I'll talk more about that in a bit. But kind of what really was the most impactful portion of my first year was getting diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder and OCD. Mental health, I dealt with mental illness for years in college and then it kind of went away. But I think just the stress of medical school kind of brought a few skeletons back. And having these amazing friends helped me get reevaluated. And I was diagnosed my second month of first year with bipolar 2 disorder. And it's not a matter of that medical school is something I can't handle. It's just that I have other things in my life that get in the way. So I felt like getting the diagnosis, getting the therapy, getting the right medication, the right management really allowed me to become more successful during the rest of the year. And I was only able to do that because I made some amazing friends. You can see some of my friends here. We went our school is very known for like the first year. Everyone goes on there's always a group that goes on a ski trip. So we went skiing. I forget where in Colorado. Breckenridge. We went to Breckenridge. Those are all my best friends that you see there. There's Jake, Evan, Brandon, Liza, Kat. Some people that weren't pictured. On the right, you see me, Alec, and Damar in front of our anatomy institute that we have, which is exciting. And obviously, we did the COVID class, so a lot of this was through Zoom during the first year. So a lot of the OSCEs that we had, if you know what an OSCE is, it's a standardized patient encounter, was just from the waist up. So I did a lot of things in pajama bottoms during that first year. But what really made it super awesome was at the end of the year, at my school, again, I love my school, is because we were the COVID class, we never had any official class events until the very end. And so we rented out this big old bar. It was amazing. And it was just a fun time. I felt like we were finally coming together as a class. And what I enjoyed most about it is pass fail. And I know people are always like, oh, pass fail, residency. I obviously am not a resident and I'm trying to get into residency myself. But I felt that going to a pass-fail school in the age of pass-fail step one allowed me not only to better take care of myself and, find myself a bit more, also get involved in clubs, but also allowed me to build my relationships that have really been, kind of the foundation that my med school experience has stood upon. First year basically was a fun time. Loved it. Would do it all over again. And I'm not lying, I would do it all over again. But yeah, if we could go to the next slide, Kat. And please ask me questions about anything.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, we have a poll actually to find out what year people are. So I'm going to launch that really quickly. So go ahead and answer, and I'm going to let those come in. Javi, what was your very favorite part of year one?
Oh my God, so many. But I think in terms of anatomy was my favorite class. I loved anatomy because we were in person, and anatomy was just you get to be so social. And my friends, after hours is you go to study after hours. And my friend Damar was like, bro, this isn't social hour, man. We're here to study. And I'm like, dude, what do you mean? This is hangout time. What are you talking about? I just really loved it because I got to see everyone and we make jokes and really build those relationships. But I think more outside of school, my favorite part of first year was after every exam, some of us would host a party, and it was just really fun to have that camaraderie, and it really just kind of sharing our experience with each other and just laughing and venting. Group venting was really a good time, and just really building those social connections during my first year is what gave me several fun moments.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. We have 82% of our responses in. It's a pretty clear split between people who are in year one and people who are not US or Canadian-based medical students. So very cool, everyone. I'm going to share those results. But if you want to, feel free to share where you're coming from in the chat, because we love to hear kind of where you are in the world and anything else you'd like to share. Okay. Moving on to our next slide.
So then the summer after first year. So a lot of people ask, what do you do after the summer first year? The way I see it, there's three things you can do. So to the first years, take notes. I'm kidding, but like maybe. You can do research. It's a my school is has a summer research program that almost all of us get involved in. But during the first year, after my summer first year, I kind of took a few weeks off just to like vibe. But then I just continued my research. During my first year, I went to a few conferences, and then even going into my second year, which was really exciting. The second thing you can do after summer first year is study. Like my school, we finished the first year curriculum with micro. So you learn like all the bugs and we call it bugs and drugs, right? And you do your Ankis or your flashcards or whatever during the summer, right? Keep up with the first year material. That's something else you can do. But the third thing that you can do that's also very high yield is do nothing. Like literally, if you just want to take the summer and do absolutely nothing, do it. Like literally, it's gonna make no difference. Just make sure that whatever you decide to do the summer after your first year is something that you're going to enjoy and find a lot of value in. Another thing that you can do that I didn't mention is preceptorships. So I did a family med preceptorship after my first year during that summer as well, where it was kind of a mini rotation, which loved it so much. It was such a great experience. It really actually even prepared me eventually for when third year came along. Understanding how to work with the patient on rounds and how to present to a patient, how to present to the attendings. I have a very great mentor. He's super awesome. So yeah, I guess those are the highest yield things that I would definitely recommend. And again, don't feel bad if you're choosing to do nothing and everyone else is, being gunners. It's okay. Literally have fun, rub it in their faces, make fun of them for working, have a good time. So that's that's what I'm saying. So like after my first year, I did research, went to some conferences, did a preceptorship, and we hung out. And these are all my friends at the bottom. Here we are. Again, you see a lot of repeated faces because I do everything that I'd love to do with my friends. And it's what's also exciting about medical school is you find people, hopefully, right, that are like-minded like yourself, and you can do all these things together. And that's really what makes medical school as terrible as it can be. Makes it very enjoyable, at least for me, is finding the people to go through this together, and through that finding this passion, this love, this camaraderie, and a few laughs along the way. But yeah, so if we can go to the next slide, Kat, please.
Perfect. One question before we get there, Javi. Harris asked, it's getting difficult to keep up with school material while keeping up with Anki reviews and practice questions. Is it important to prioritize Anki versus practice questions in your opinion, or are both important?
Ideally, do everything, right? No, but okay, so I'm going to assume Harrison is a first year. Harrison, could you let us, because that might kind of change a little bit how I go about it. But if I had to do this all over again the first 2 years, I think so. Whatever type of flashcards service or system you use, I think flashcards are very useful to keep a material abreast, especially for lecture exams. What I would really do is save those practice questions. Like let's say it's a 2 or 3 week unit or module. I would say those practice questions maybe for the second half of the module or the unit or the block, depending on how it's organized. Just because it gives you some time to build up the foundation, and then you can do those practice questions. And again, practice questions should be prioritized though, I think even a bit more than flashcards, because that's how you learn. You want to get those questions wrong. You need to get those questions wrong because that's how you're going to learn it. And if anything, practice questions are like active flashcards, right? But kind of a little more tip on that on the practice question thing is it's not about just doing questions though. It's about how do you review them. So the way I review questions that helped me a lot for step one was, regardless if I got the question right or wrong, is why was the answer right? And more importantly, why were the answers wrong, right? And then one more order is what would make the answers correct? Because really, if you do it that way, you're covering maybe 5 or 6 topics in one question, and then you build those connections. Did I answer the question? I feel like I answered the question there.
So would your answer change at all if you knew that Harris is a second year medical student?
A little bit. So the reason why it would change a little bit is because in the first year, you're just trying to see things, right? You're just trying to stay afloat. Second year, you're like, okay, because in the second year, you're thinking step one. So if I was a second year, I would really care a little bit more about um, practice questions. My biggest tip for a second year to prepare for step one is start practice questions earlier than what you think you should start them. If it was me, day one of second year, I would start doing maybe like 5 or 10 questions a day if you can. If I had to choose between one or the other, I would rather do questions and review them very well than spend hours on Anki, because that's really how you build connections a lot better. And then before your lecture exams, redo those questions. You want to review those questions, and depending on what third-party resource you use for questions, you want to get a second, maybe depending on the resource, a third pass on them. But yeah, so if you're more distinctly second years, I would prioritize questions more over Anki. That's me personally through my experiences. First year, maybe try to memorize things a little bit more and then build that foundation up.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, next slide.
I know that was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, everyone. I hope you find some value in it. So then second year happened, though. So here's a picture of me. Second year, I still went to a few conferences. Some of them were online because it was still like the COVID precautions. But second year is where I dealt with imposter syndrome, or at least it started keeping up. It was like my first, so it was like the hematology, oncology, rheumatology block. And I never took an immunology class before medical school, except like what you learned for the MCAT. So it was immunology, and I was like, I told my friend, it was like 3 weeks in, I was like, is this supposed to be this hard? I was like, no way, it's not supposed to be this hard. Like, this is hard, right? Like, I felt so stupid. I was like, what am I learning? Why am I learning this? Like leukemia, lymphomas, I was like, what's the difference? It was so frustrating. And it made me feel like, am I smart enough? Like, what is the purpose of me being here? I did well, I got a high 80 on the exam, but still, it was just like, I felt so dumb because the volume of information started coming up and up and up. And then, but I survived that block, and then neuro happened. So I think depending on your curriculum, I think what I learned during that time is every med student hates neuro. So if you hate neuro, it's normal. If you feel very dumb in neuro, it's fine. Like, personally, if you feel dumb at all in medical school, it's very fine and normal. But neuro is terrible. Neuro was definitely like being my worst. I liked the material, but it was such a terrible time because it was very lecture heavy. And so things like, like for example, like I use, I use it a lot in my first year. I use RX a lot. RX helped me get the high yield material, but there's still lecture material for neuro. And I was like, oh my God, like, why are they doing this to me? Why do I care about these tracks? I don't care. I've never had to learn it ever again. But anyway, but really during my second year, it's kind of where I started to just get more of a rhythm as to the grind, but that's where I started also posting on social media. So if the pictures up here, kind of the one with the monitor, I presented at STFM, Societies for Teachers of Family Medicine. A really big project I worked on. One of my projects that I worked, so I also have an interest in LGBTQIA health and prevention. And so one thing that I did was I created a simulation for the medical students using members of the transgender community as SPs. So in West Texas, the trans community is not something that you are very exposed to. And that's a community that as physicians, we're going to deal with at least at some point in our lives, right? And so I was able to get members into the community involved and expose medical students not only just to them, but how to work with them and then, how to respectfully work with this type of population. And it was a hit. So I was very excited about that. On the bottom, we went to also like New Mexico, Albuquerque for the balloon festival. Some of my friends that you see there. And then on the right, you see, my little social media thing. So how do you as a futurist plan on combining social stigma to review? Okay, sorry, I was like reading the comment. But why do I bring the social media thing? The social media thing, I think in this age, social media allows us to connect to people that otherwise we would not connect with. It also helps us find community. I saw one time this one person on TikTok post like, Dane's life of a medical student. And it was like so perfect. And I was like, I'm sorry, that's not my life. Like, where's the crying? Like, where's the messy apartment? Like, where's like, like all these things? And I was like, no. So I made a little TikTok like, can we normalize getting rid of the aesthetic medical student, normalize being blah, blah, blah. And it blew up. And I was like, okay, like this is cool. And then just venting about, having bipolar disorder in medical school and OCD and mental illness kind of helped build this community. And I thought that was really exciting. And through that, working with pre-meds, because when you're in medical school, it's super easy to forget why you did this. It's so easy to think that it's terrible, you hate it, you feel dumb, blah, blah, blah. But you forget that at some point you were on the other side, right? At some point, all of us were willing to do literally anything and everything to get in here. So that's kind of was a blessing in disguise for me during a very rough year, was I got to help motivate and mentor mental hopefuls, which really placed things into perspective, which made me even more motivated to continue persevering on through. Also, it was just a fun time just to like, rant to people that were my friends who like weren't forced to listen to me. So it was also nice in that regard. But yeah, next slide, or questions or whatever. Okay. Oh yeah. So very ugly picture. So I know. What do you call it? Jump scare. I know. So this picture though summarizes my step one experience. I hated studying for step one. I hated it. So what was the problem with step one? So the problem with step one was I was in that class. I was the first class to do step one pass fail. So what did everyone say? Everyone being everyone, including administration. Don't worry about step one anymore. So I was like, all right, I ain't gonna worry about it. Because everyone said, oh my God, it's gonna be so easy. Like you just have to pass, you'll be so fine. I was like, all right, cool, chill. Like, I don't care then. So I never studied a single like step one type of strategy until dedicated. And then that's when I realized, LOL, I hate this. The studying, because I was like, there's so much information that I forgot. There's so much that I did not prepare for. And it was, realistic. It was, I'm very open about it. If you follow me, I hated it. I was never happy. Like it was very hard for me to, learn how to study. It's not, and I think that's a problem in medical school is like, we're all inherently intelligent, smart, capable, and amazing. It's just that for some of us, sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to figure out how to do that, right? Not that we can't, we just have to figure out what works for us. So eventually after, I postponed the start of my third year by one rotation, which is, kind of typical for the class. But I was still, so the reason I couldn't take STEP was in my school, if you don't know what an NBME is, you needed to get a 66 on an NBME to be allowed to take step one at my school. So I was not able to reach that threshold. So I had to postpone a second rotation. Now I have a few aspirations for some programs, and that was going to ruin my fourth year. And I was like, you know what? Let me just take this exam now that I'm ready. I'm going to take a year off. So then I took a year off. So then people are like, oh my God, I took a year off. So it was an enrichment year. Sorry, I like have terrible GERD these days. So during that time, it was a fun time to not be a student. I think med school should be 5 years, honestly, and we should all have a year off. But it's still, it's so hard, and you get a year off to just do whatever you want. So I ended up, I don't know if it's the next slide, but I don't know if it's next slide, and if it is, we'll skip through it. But so during my gap, my enrichment year, I did research. So we did. I did some research projects. Still, I went to a preventative medicine conference. The biggest thing I did during my year off was I was a GED teacher at a local community college where I taught Spanish GED classes, and I was also a professional tutor. So I just tutored everything within reason as well. And it was really exciting because it's kind of like, I still got to make a difference in people's lives, which is why I want to be a physician, work with, these populations, these Spanish-speaking populations, and help them kind of, in their goals. So eventually, I did it, it worked out, and now we are a third year. And so so these next slides are blank because I just wanted to open up for discussion and just kind of chat through it as I go. But we're not, kind of where I'm at right now. And please, if there's any questions at any point now, like please interrupt me. But now I'm in third year, so kind of how my third year is going is, and we'll talk about tips and tricks in a bit. But my third year is going well. I am now in class of 2025. I started with PEDS rotation, so I'm in my second rotation in family. PEDS at my school, so we do 6 core rotations in my school. They're 8 weeks long. And PEDS, oh my God, PEDS is so like, oh my God. I love kids. I was a swim coach for 7 years, but oh my god, peds is so ugh. So I'm just like, but peds, basically in peds, in my school, you do 1 week of something different. What would really make it frustrating was like you would start off with something, you would start off knowing nothing, finish the week feeling comfortable, and then like gotta start all over. But what I learned in third year, what makes third year is a lot better than second year in a lot of ways, but it's also harder because there's no time to study. You're for most rotations, you're there from like 6, 7, 8 in the morning till 4, 5, sometimes 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and you're still expected to not only be a student but be a person. And that's the hardest part is you're finally doing what you love. You're finally getting, to practice, to see, to touch, to feel, to talk, but you still have to study. And I'll be honest, I did not do super hot during my evaluations were really, really good. My OSCE was really, really good, but I struggled through burnout right away the first half of my peak rotation. One hard nursery week, which you would think nursery would not be the hardest week, but it was the hardest week for me, really burned me out. And it was really hard to study and do problems in preparation for my shelf exam. And I failed the shelf exam by 2 points, and it was so annoying. Just 2 little points, and I was like, oh my god. But unfortunately, in my school, you get one freebie, so that's not going to happen again. So we will take our peach stuff at the end of the year. But now I'm in family medicine, and so I want to do family medicine. So if you ask me what specialty do I want to do, I'm thinking family or emergency. Family's going super well. It's thankfully the opposite now. I finally figured just figuring out how to study. I finally figured out a rhythm that's working. I'm very consistent in my practice questions those last 2 weeks, and it's just super fun to like have these validating moments. And kind of my last little bit, and then we'll kind of talk about some tips and tricks and stuff. Last little bit is that's really what it comes down to when it comes to your first and second year medical school. It's finding those moments that keep you engaged, those moments that keep you happy, and that moments that remind you why you're doing it. So, a few examples would be, I was in this one room with this one patient doing my thing, walked out, just doing something outside, and the patient tells the resident, she was like, hey, by the way, that young man, he is very thorough and very caring. Can you please tell him he's gonna be a good doctor one day? And I was like, oh my god, like what? Like me, doctor? What? Like who is she? And so that made me feel really good about myself. And even getting the validation from the residents and the attendings, like that I go out of my way to get involved. And it's like, okay, like so I can do this. And kind of my last little bit favorite one is as stupid, as dumb, as silly, as lost as you might feel, you can freaking do this. Like, I mean, if I can do it, you can do it, right? No, but it's gonna be a fun time. But it's kind of a quick pause. There's any questions or anything, Kat?
Yeah, there's some really good ones. I'm going to launch a poll as I give these to Javi just to ask when you're planning on taking step one, so we kind of have an idea of where everyone is. But Javi, a few that I really like was if I hate a subject, especially biochemistry, how do I overcome them? And, kind of tying that even to you hating neuro, how did you power through something that you didn't like?
So my mom gives the best advice in the world. My mom has a third grade education from Mexico, but she gives the best advice, better than any PhD or physician I've ever imagined in my life. My mom always says, find the joy in what you're learning. If you hate it, you're not going to learn it. If you enjoy it, you'll learn it better. And sometimes, screw it, fake it. That's the honest, raw advice is you have to find something that reminds you why you're learning what you're learning. I hate microbiology personally. I hate cell biology. I think it's the most boring thing in the world. But I was like, I said I learned this, right? And you should, think of it like puzzles, like that's really what a lot of this is like, what are the connections that you're making? And get the topic you hate and connect it to something that you love. So for example, let's say biochemistry was something we always make fun of, glycolysis, blah, 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 blah. Sure, like the glycolytic pathway is not the most, appealing thing to look at. But then you think of it like, well, relate that to nutrition. Relate nutrition now to diabetes. And relate diabetes to an underserved population. So really knowing that, this whatever, phosphonate whatever, is actually very important to, the Hispanic family that eats tortillas all day. And now you have to know that to be able to help them. So again, it's finding the joy, finding the connections that remind you why you're doing that. That kind of makes sense?
That's such a good answer. I love that. Okay, a couple more if you don't mind. First,
Please.
to share, 70% of our attendees are taking step one in 2024 or after. So that's awesome that you guys are preparing now. Okay, so Dominique asked a question. What is your advice on a study schedule? So specifically for exams and obviously step one, what about a rhythm that you might use for studying?
Oh my God, this is a perfect question. Okay, because I can ramble a lot here. Let me help you all here. So you can see me type here. Hello. Can you see that there?
I
Did it
don't know.
on the tips and tricks slides?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Oh, dang it! I thought that's kind of what I wanted to do here. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
here we go. Oh, I'll be get out of presenting. Go for it.
Okay. So study plan. So it's for lecture. Okay. So this is literally what I did, and I used USMLE-Rx a lot for this. So here's what I would do. So again, write this down, everyone. So if I had a lecture thing, so first of all, lecture is useless, but you got to learn it anyway, right? So here's what I would do. So number one is first, I would use my whatever third-party resource videos. Okay. So for example, if it was like, let's say cardio phys, I would watch those videos. Okay, then what? Okay. Um, then what I did, realistically is in this situation is, okay, so now what I would do is I would take out first aid and Anki, and I would go through relevant flashcards and annotate anything into first aid into first aid as a reference. Okay, cool. As a reference, okay. And then after that, okay, so this isn't an ideal day, and I really was very diligent with this in my second year. Like this is literally what I did for most things. So then, unfortunately, I had to watch lecture, or either watch at 2x speed / go through slides and add things that are not in Anki or first aid into first aid, or make a flashcard out of that lecture info. So this way, if you want to get those extra points, this is the one way to guarantee that not only you're getting the big picture stuff, but you're also integrating those lecture specific details. And then the last thing is, weekends is I would do RX questions. I loved RX questions. Like RX questions, when I discovered them like during my first year, I was like, oh my God, why is no one using this? Like this is the best. And like I know this is like a first aid like held thing, but I generally love the RX questions. So RX questions, because I saw them as active flashcards, and it was a great way to memorize first aid. And then I would repeat them all 1 or 2 days before the lecture exam. And this was kind of my formula for success in my second year before lecture exam. That's basically an outline of what I did that really worked well for me. As you can see, it's repetition is kind of the priority here, and especially those practice questions. Like, I'm not gonna brag. On my renal pathology exam, I only missed one question, and I did the RX questions 3 times for anything that was renal pathology related, and I crushed it. And the only exam I failed during my second year was the GI pathology exam, and that was the only unit that I did not use first aid for, RX for. So do what you will with that. But I regret not doing the RX questions. They were so useful for me. I feel like that was a very good detailed answer. Was that a good answer for y'all?
Liked it. One more
Okay.
question for me. How do you stay disciplined and kind of stick to your study schedule? So, okay, I've laid out a study schedule, but that's different than actually, following it.
Yes. So how do I do this? Well, I don't know. No, I'm kidding. No. Some days are good, some days are not good. Right. The trick is giving yourself that grace that sometimes you're just not going to be on it. That's where it starts off. Is understand, like some days you're just going to suck. Some days you're not going to study, and that's okay. You make up for the next day. But how do you stick with it though? I really think it's just being goal oriented and, just thinking like finding that satisfaction in the bullet list. Something that works for me a lot is I use Notion. So if y'all don't know what Notion is, look it up. But Notion is kind of like a life organizer planner, and it's just very satisfying to like, kind of go through it, click these off and stuff like that. But kind of a more realistic example was, well, the renal pathology exam. Also, that was my hardest time in medical school emotionally. I was going through a lot of hard stuff that was not related to school, and I just got a little emotional. But I was literally crying while studying, because I was going through a lot of hard personal life issues during that time. But I was like, I still gotta crush this because one, I genuinely love the kidney. I think it's the coolest organ. I love the material, and I was like, I want to do very well, and I had to push through it. And that's really the kind of the harsh reality of medical school, right? Is you got to push through it sometimes. So, finding either the joy, the grind, the fire that keeps you lit and moving is going to keep you dedicated to this schedule. But more importantly, like I said in the beginning, give yourself that grace that 1 or 2 days is not going to make you not going to do anything. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to not study. It's okay to, dare I say, be a person. And I think if you take off that pressure, then you're more likely to actually follow through, because then it's something that you enjoy versus something that you have to do. Does that make sense?
That was a beautiful answer. And I want to remind everyone that you are a person, not just a medical student. You're a person and you're working so hard. So remember to take breaks and, give yourself that grace. I love that answer. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide if that's okay with you, Javi.
Sure, yeah, definitely. So kind of, so now we're, how to get involved in clubs and research. Okay, so this is like, I'm kind of just going to speed through this a little bit, just whatever questions you have, like, please bring them up. But I just want to give my take on how I got my resume as to what it is. Again, I'm not the smartest thing in the world when it comes to that. That's the dog, but the book. I had to work really, really hard to do like okay in school. But you also have to know your strengths. And my strength is clubs and involvement and community engagement. So if you want to get involved, number one is, just ask around, so let's make a little bullet list. So number one, if you're to ask me, how do I get involved in medical school? Well, find your passion, right? It's very easy to say that. It's very simple to say that. It's obvious, but it's obvious for a reason. So if you want to do, let's say you want to do, something that I don't want to do. Let's say ortho. I make fun of ortho a lot because all my friends want to be orthopedic surgeons, and I want to not be that. So start an ortho club. Start an ortho club. Ortho club. That's number one. And why am I saying this? Because my school is really good at encouraging us to start our own thing. Thank you so much. My roommate was good again, my dog. So basically, find your passions, start a club. That's number one. And then the second thing is find a need. Find a need. So for me, I work at this free clinic a lot in my first years, and I got very frustrated that there's people who have these preventable diseases who just don't know how to take care of themselves. So I found a need, and then I found people that are like-minded, and then we started initiatives. So find a need to start an initiative. Initiative. I am in medical school. I cannot spell things, obviously. And then find a mentor. And I'm outlining because I ramble a lot. Find a mentor. But when you find this mentor, why is that important also? Because then you build that connection, you build that relationship with someone that can guide you and one day maybe vouch for you and dare to write a letter of recommendation to residency for you. That's kind of the mentality that I had when I was trying to do all this. One, obviously I want to help other people, right? Obviously, but how is it going to help me too? So I found initiatives that I enjoyed that were also beneficial to my personal and professional goals. And then last thing, kind of with the research is, like I said, just cold call. There's no one's going to ask you, like no one's going to be like, hey, here's a case study. Do you want it? They're not going to do that. Like they're just not. So if you want that case report, that case series, if you want that trial to be part of, you have to actively look for it. So how do I do that? You go to faculty profiles, faculty profiles. You read what they do. Make a template email. like a template email, and then again, I'm giving you all like the legit, like my little strategies. I'm like, okay, this is how it's gonna work with me. I'm not trying to be like deceiving or conniving or anything. This is literally what works for me. If it helps anyone else in their goals. For example, email, and then inserts. Literally, I had a template that said insert specialty here. LOL. But again, because I just knew that's something what I wanted to do, and regardless if I have an interest in ortho, radiology, OB, or family, I want to do medicine. And the way I see it is, it doesn't matter what specialty you want to do. You still need to learn about the body. So don't feel like just because you want to do a certain specialty, you have to do research in that specialty. Think about it. Ortho still needs cardiology clearance. So ortho still needs to understand cardiology. So even though you want to go into some surgery, you still need to understand the cardiovascular system, right? So, all these things work together. So don't just pigeonhole yourself into what you think you want to do. Have a broad mind, not just in your rotations, but also in your research interests. That's kind of the general for that one. Any questions on that?
I'm not seeing any questions on that, but I have one note. My brother-in-law runs a lab at a university, and he sometimes will laugh at the cold emails that he gets when they don't share a little more details. So just as a helpful tip, when you're following Javi's template, make sure that you say, the thing that you love about their lab or their research, but also how you think you could benefit them and how you could add to that lab, even if it's just that you're learning, or you're willing to do whatever. And so yeah, sharing that something personal goes a long way instead of, someone going, oh my gosh, I have 1,000 emails and this person didn't tell me why they want to be a part of my lab.
Those are very good points, Kat. How can you contribute best? What will you contribute? Contribute. I think those are really good. But yes, so something I did leave. But yeah, so find be like, oh, I really enjoyed this one article that you wrote about this. Personally, I have interest in this because. So don't just say you have an interest in whatever. Say I have an interest because of this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and expand from there. And yes, like Kat said, I think that was really good, Kat. How and what will you contribute to the team? I think that's also very important to say. So thank you for that one. So then I guess next slide, how to get ahead of step one. So like I said, I hated it, LOL. So if I were to do this all over again, which thank the gods, I cannot, will not, and do not have to, start early. But that I mean, don't start your first year. During your first year, focus on just doing well. During your first year, focus on finding what you enjoy about school. Depending on your curriculum, obviously we all have different goals. I understand that. Like I went to pass-fail curriculum, so a 99 and a 70 were the same grade, which I enjoyed. But if you go to school that has rankings, that has quartiles, and you do want those high numbers, of course you gotta put your priorities right. But focus on the first year on just being a medical student, on surviving, on thriving. And then during your second year, not summer before second year. Do whatever you want to do before second year. But when you start second year, I would just start studying for step one. That book, start memorizing it like ASAP. Like start memorizing, annotating, reviewing. So let's say, let's say you're like in I don't know, let's say like cardiopathology, right? It's like October of your second year, and you already did GI pathology. Find some time to review that GI pathology. Like you don't have to know it super well, but you just keep things fresh because you're gonna be in step one dedicated, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, I just know this so well, and I forgot everything. And you're gonna hate yourself. At least I hated myself. No, but definitely start early and earlier than that. I think the biggest mistake that my school did with us is they did not scare us. They did not scare us enough. They made us feel so relaxed about it, and that was a big mistake for someone like me. I wish the fear would have been a lot worse. So I'm very positive, but I am scaring you. Start early. So that's how I would get ahead of the step one pain and grind. That's kind of the journals on that one, Kat. If there's any questions or anything, we can go on the next one.
Yeah, no, I think that there was a good one. So kind of approaching that planning, any other tips that you might have of, okay, I have first aid, I have UWorld. What about making notes? I always think, right, like what has worked for you in the past, but what else would you suggest?
For sure. So if I had to do this all over again, but I would really focus when you're studying for step one, no Anki, or minimal. That's what I would do. So here's what worked for me. Let me say exactly what worked for me. So it's like, let's say it was UWorld, right, or whatever. Basically, what I would do was I would do flashcards for 1 hour, and these were flashcards that I made based off of questions I did wrong. And then after that, I would do one block, and yeah, people do use UWorld, right? So I would do one block of UWorld, and then I would review that. But it's the review. This is what made a difference, reviewing. So based off of that, I would choose one or two topics and either choose a third-party resource. It could be RX, it can be Boards and Beyond or whatever, just something that you can get that topic that you're not doing so hot on and you can reinforce it. Choose a third-party resource to reinforce. And I did this for 3 to 4 hours. So it could be, RX questions. It could be Anki cards, but make sure it's a focused review on a topic or two. So if you want to use other resources, right, because there's a million of them, this is kind of how I would do that in that opinion. And then really what I just did is repeat all this twice is what I did. And that was my day of studying for step one, and that worked out. I will say this, as much as I struggled in the first half of it, I was very confident going in. I will say that. I had a really good MBA read before. I had a really good UWorld exam before. And, on the second block of the real thing, I said to myself, I'm not going to fail this. I got this. And why did I do that? Because I put in the work and I put in the repetition. And I kept on repeating things. And then the same questions came up on the real exam. So that's kind of what I would do in that situation, a little more specifically in other situations. Does that answer the question, Kat?
So great. Okay, one more before we move on. Someone asked, they said that he's been interested in pediatric medicine always. Can you please share why you didn't love that?
LOL. Oh, I was like literally complaining about peds today to someone. LOL peds. Okay, so peds is not easy, number one. Peds is internal medicine for little children, like for smaller humans. Like peds is everything. You have NICU, you have surgery, you have everything for peds. So first of all, peds is very, 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 very hard. The reason I like peds was simply because, not because of the material. The material is exciting. It was in nursery was the hardest week for me because you were there. The attendings were great. They were very, very great. They gave me good reviews, but they were just very high expectations. And we were there. I would show up at 6:15 in the morning and I wouldn't leave until 6 p.m., 5 p.m. sometimes, and I hated it. And during nursery, it was just for some reason, it was just a very high stress situation. I don't understand why. The stress of others rubbed off on me, which made me feel stressed about it. And then here's a funny story though. This is a funny story. So the way my school works is on your nursery week, you have to do a newborn exam, so on a baby, and it's an observed exam that you get graded on. And so, okay, cool, let me do the exam. So in the nursing nursery, there's the little lamps for the jaundice. So I was there for 11 hours. At the end of the day, I do my exam. The baby is screaming, crying, making all these noises, and I hate loud noises. And then there's a heat lamp on my face, and I start sweating. And I am supposed to explain my exam from head to toe, like with my mouth. And as I'm doing that, what does the attending say? As I'm doing that, the attending goes, "Hurry up." And I literally went, and I was just like, in my head, I was like, what did I just do with my mouth? And I just felt so nervous. And I started visibly sweating drops on the baby as it's screaming, crying. And I'm like, I hate this so much. I hate this so much. And so I went home and I was like, I never want to hold another baby again. But I complained for fun. Peds was really exciting. I enjoyed peds a lot. Like peds clinic was was so fun. It was so fun to build relationships with these families. It was so fun. I'm a motivator by heart, I think. So I really took the role to motivate these kids and remind them, like, listen to your mom, listen to your dad, all this jazz. So that's really the only reason I did like peds. It was really more of a personal experience, but I think the material is really exciting. The experience is really rewarding. So if you like peds, go in with an amazing perspective. I just happen to have a very traumatizing experience. But yeah, that's my answer to that one.
That's beautiful. Okay, I'm going to move us to our next slide.
So yeah, so kind of my last few little pieces of advice is kind of more intimate, but med school, we talk about med school, what we talk about grades, step one, boards, board exams, all this. But what about friends? We don't hear a lot about on TikTok, on Instagram, right? How do you make friends in medical school? Med school is isolating. Like med school is not super fun unless you find, the right people. Sorry, I was like gonna do a dramatic effect there. Unless you find just some amazing people that you can have a good time with. The way you make friends in medical school, in my opinion, is literally just ask to study. It's the simplest thing. Everyone starts medical school the same way, excited, also scared on the first day. But no one knows how to study. No one knows how to fucking. No one knows how. No one knows how to study. Everyone's lost. And so what I did, I was like, well, I don't know what to do. Well, let me ask these people. Wait, y'all want to study? And they're like, oh my god, yeah. Like we don't know what we're doing. I was like, okay, cool. Neither do I. You're in an anatomy lab one day. You're going over structures. You start making jokes, sharing laughs. And at the end of the day, you're going to dinner together and you're having a fun time. And then now you're your best friends. And literally in the span of 5 hours. Ask people to study. Also, get involved. Get involved. Med school is not just studying in your apartment. Med school should also be go to those meetings, get that free food. Like there's free food. Go. Also, med school is, being a physician is not just memorizing pathways. Being a physician is understanding your community, is understanding how to work with people and how to understand people. And it's getting involved that you build these skills, these schemas to work off of. And then also, as much as I hate it, go to lecture. Maybe sometimes for fun. Second year gets so lonely. Second year is like, at my school, no one goes to lecture. Sometimes it gets so sad. You're like, I just need to see people. And you would go to lecture literally just to hang out. Like obviously you would learn or lecture, right? But then during the breaks, you talk to people. And a little more intimate on my end, but there was one time during my first year that I was also not in a very good spot. And, I'm very open about it on social media. And I was not going to do something stupid, but I was having the thoughts again. And I just said, I got to go to lecture. I have to be around people. I can't just be in this apartment anymore. I went to lecture. Didn't take a single note. I just had to be around people. And then eventually I started taking notes again during lecture. During the breaks, I went to go talk to my friends and I was like, I'm a person. I can exist and I can be. So my point here is do not isolate yourself. Don't isolate yourself. Like you don't have to go to parties or anything. You can just find someone that you can just chat with, just literally just study with. And it'll make your experience so much better and so much more fruitful than just being a student. Because again, you are a person and people have friends. So it's okay to make friends, okay? That's kind of my little tidbit there. I don't know, any questions on that? Any thoughts on that, anyone? No, okay. Well, that's it. I'm ready for the last slide.
Perfect.
The last one is how to be happy. I put this slide because I have a very funny answer to this one. But literally, people, I can talk people's heads off. A lot of people give advice on social media about med school. When people ask me, how do I succeed in medical school? This was when I realized how I could be happy in medical school. Ready? Are you ready? Stop caring. What do I mean by that? You got into medical school. We were in medical school because we were high achieving as pre-meds, right? We always want to be on top of things. We always want to be on top of everything. But then it was like towards the end of first year, I was like, I just don't care anymore. Like I'm always gonna be behind. I'm always gonna be behind. I'm always gonna feel dumb. So why am I gonna fight it? I just accepted it. I was like, this is just what it is. It's a grind. It is enjoyable. It's amazing. It also sucks a lot. And when I realized, I just don't care anymore. Like I just don't. It was a lot more manageable. I suddenly was happy. I was okay taking days off because I wasn't worried about being caught up. You're never going to be caught up. You're just never going to be caught up. There's so much material, you're never going to be caught up. So if you know you're not going to be cut off, why worry about it? Take the day off, go out, go work out, cook, sleep, take a nap, play video games. Literally just stop caring about it sometimes and just know that it's always going to be there. So I worry about it. And why do I bring this up? Kind of my last little point. I deal a lot with, when my bipolar stuff, I also have my OCD stuff. My OCD stuff, there was one day I was in an apartment and I was worrying about something I should not be worrying about. And then one day I was just like, why do I care? Like, nothing's going to happen if I stop caring. I'm not going to die. The world's not going to explode. My parents are still going to be alive. So why do I care? And then I just started laughing because I just was like, oh my God, like, I just feel so much better. I don't care anymore. And that's something I actively practice during third year. It's third year, I am always stressed. But if I'm always stressed, I'm like, then why do I care? Why do I fight it? Just accept it, embrace the suck. And then embracing the suck, you can take ownership and control it. And then you'll feel a lot better about yourself. And you'll just laugh about it, have fun with it, and eventually it works out. I don't know. Did that make sense? That's kind of what my little like philosophical idea there.
That's really cool. We had a question about relationships. Do you have any advice on balancing a partnership, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, anything like that?
Yeah. And so okay, so while I am desperately single these days, I'm kidding. No, I definitely think, whether it be platonically or romantically, I think relationships is all about communication. The communication and setting expectations clear. So let's say you have a partner and they're not in medical school. I believe that you as a student, you have to also prioritize not just your professional life, but your personal life. But you want to communicate to your partner, what are you realistically able to contribute and what should they realistically be able to expect from you? And then from there, you can find the common ground and just being open with where you're at, again, what you're able to give and what you're able to even receive. And my friends who are all married now, basically, which is so annoying. But all my friends, none of their significant others are in medical school, and we talk about it. It's really just communication, understanding. Sure, sometimes there'll be miscommunication, but it's patience, communication, and also just empathy and sympathy for the other person, and understanding that we both have needs, and we just have to make sure that those needs are understood and out in the open, and then you can work to find that middle ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought that was perfect. I thought that was really good. So before, just noting time, since we have 3 minutes left. Oh, and your question asker said that was very good. I would like to grab our two winners before I let everybody go, and then we're going to go ahead and answer a few more questions. But before we do that, if I call your name, if you can just shout out in the questions or in chat that you're here, I would appreciate that. But our two winners are going to be Dominique Ivory and Muhammad Hasib. So if you are still here, let me know. Congratulations, you are the proud winners of a 6-month RX 360 Plus subscription. So yay, I'll get you all set up with that this week. Okay, Javi, another question, unless do you have any, I'm going to go to our Q&A here. So what about being more consistent and sticky with your aim, even when there's distractions? So there's a lot going on in my life. How do I actually stay consistent with all the things I'm supposed to be doing?
I think for me, the number one, it's something I was talking to someone about today, actually, is one, what is the thing that's going to take the most energy from you? Probably studying. And then from there is, number one is, what is the best time of day that you can do that? So for me, I am an early morning studier. I cannot do problems at 8 p.m. So I wake up at 3:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, 4 a.m. now just to do my problems. And that's been helping me a lot so that I can do the things that I enjoy that take less energy, and I can do them in the afternoon. So I think that's something practical that I've picked up the last actually few weeks is what is highest energy and when is the most optimal time of the day that I can do that based off of my or like required commitments like lectures, meetings, stuff like that. And then from there, like let's say like working out, or doing stuff like this for me, like my hobbies, right? Or like my example is making sure that those are done in times that are low energy, where I can enjoy them more and it's not work anymore. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question a little bit?
Very good to me. What about one
Okay.
more, unless there are any more that people want to raise their hand or put in the chat? But you think a notebook with question bank takeaways is more effective than online flashcards?
No, at least I don't think so. I tried the notebook thing. Um, I tried the notebook thing like on typing or whatever, however you want to say it, or however you want to do it. But because yeah, like you'll put in work on putting the notes, but when are you going to force yourself to look at those notes again? And are you just going to read them, or are you going to actively work to recall them? I think flashcards is the way to go, whether it's, the RX ones or you make your own or Anki or whatever. But I just think flashcards are the way to go because then you're going to force yourself to actively practice and engage with that material as opposed to, let me make this notebook look really pretty and organized. Okay, cool. I'm never going to look at it again. Because then you're just adding, think about it. You have a page of material and then you're just adding more pages. And then you're going to be like, oh my God, this is a lot of stuff I'm not going to go over it. Versus flashcards is just discrete amount of information, bits at a time that you can then build connections upon with them. At least that's how I think about it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Do you have a recommendation? I mean, you don't need to recommend USMLE-Rx or flashcards. Do you have a recommendation for others that have worked for you as well?
Yes. So if you use UWorld, and it doesn't have to be. So UWorld has a feature where you can make your own flashcards. It just, to me, I just use that feature because it's just seamlessly integrated with the questions. But again, you can use Anki or whatever, or little note cards if you want to. But I just think making your own flashcards on questions has been, at least for me, making those flashcards has been a lot better for me than actually using the Anki flashcards during step one, dedicated, and third year. I don't think I've used Anki at all, like during third year. So I really just use, I'm talking specifically during third year, is just my own flashcards that I create. And that's been helping me so much more. So that's another resource apart from RX, if you're just wondering.
That's great. I think that's it. Unless anyone else has any questions, I believe that we kind of have gone through these all.
Well, then that's it. That's all you need from me. If I can just say, hello and goodbye to everyone. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. Hopefully there was some value in there. And if you don't follow me on social media, but you want to, you can. You can go to it's my TikTok is the number where I'm at. It's at Javi from TikTok. Very simple. Straight to the point. I was very proud of the name when I came up with it. Or my Instagram, which is at Javi from IG. So I'm always out to answer questions. Instagram is the best way to reach out to me for messages. And yeah, have a good time. My last little message is, again, just have fun. Like at the end of the day, life is just about having fun, enjoying the ride, embracing the suck, and play with your friends about it once in a while. Have a good time.